the years there have been countless video game sequels. Some are very good, some are a bit of a disappointment and full of glitches, and some of them are just okay. But some video game sequels are so good, they don't just blow the doors off, they blow your drawers off. So this is a video about one of my favourite sequels, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. I'm going to explain why I love it so much as a game, and why, in my opinion, despite some small flaws, it's such a good example of a sequel. So, why make a video game sequel? Well, for money, of course. But aside from that, I think the best reason for making a sequel is when there are more stories to be told and more places to explore within a game's universe. I suppose developers only have so much time to make a game, and when a video game world, gameplay and characters capture gamers' imaginations, if the developers are still inspired and have new ideas, in my opinion there's really no reason not to make any more games. So, why is Crash Bandicoot 2 one of my favourite sequels? Well, let's start at the beginning. A true sequel, Crash 2 starts immediately after the events of Crash 1. The villain, Dr. Neo Cortex, discovers that he can use power crystals to power his super Cortex Vortex and brainwash the world, making everyone his slaves. Once again, it's up to good old Crash Bandicoot to save the day. So Crash 2 has the same over-the-top style story as the first game. Crazy, but a lot of fun. I think the characters in Crash Bandicoot are great, and in Crash 2 they're as good as ever. Crash is still the same, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but a determined hero with a heart of gold. And Cortex is still the same amusing blend of mad and evil. I really enjoyed Brendan O'Brien's version of Cortex in Crash Bandicoot 1.
We are closer than ever before. Quickly! Into the vortex!
In Crash 2, he has a new voice actor, Clancy Brown, but fear not, he does a superb job capturing Cortex's personality.
Yes! My plan is nearly complete, and I have you, Crash Bandicoot, to thank for it.
Dr. Embryo is now working against Cortex, but we saw that coming in the first game, after Cortex took credit for much of his work, and didn't exactly treat him nicely.
But Dr. Cortex, we have not determined the cause of past failures. Moron! This Bandicoot will be my general, and he will lead my Cortex commandos to world domination. This time I shall reign triumphant!
It's frustrating when characters are pointlessly changed in sequels, but this doesn't happen in Crash Bandicoot 2. Having said that, there is an issue with a disappearing character, Crash's girlfriend Torna. Someone somewhere got offended by the way she looked, and she had to be cut out of the game. It's a long story, and other people have already covered it in Crash 2 videos, so I won't go on about it. She was replaced with Crash's sister Coco. Although I don't like continuity errors between games, something like this was out of the developer's hands, so this isn't a criticism of Crash 2, just worth mentioning in the video. As someone who still owns a lot of old video games and technology, I'm not a big fan of change just for the sake of change. I think this can apply to games as well. Crash 1 wasn't broke and doesn't need fixing. However, it's important that a sequel has plenty of new content, giving the player a new experience, while staying true to what they loved about the original. I feel that Crash Bandicoot 2 strikes this balance perfectly. We have all the gameplay elements that we know and love from Crash 1, the excellent platforming, the fun attacks, the tight controls, but there's new content as well. Crash has new abilities, he can slide attack, which is really fun, and this can be combined with a jump to reach places a normal jump can't. Crash can also do a body slam and crawl now, and these new abilities come in handy throughout the game and allow for new gameplay challenges that we never saw in Crash Bandicoot 1. And as well as all these, Crash can now crawl along monkey bars, ride a jetboard, and a jetpack. The hog riding levels in Crash 1 were a lot of fun, and these return in the form of riding a polar bear. And in the level Unbearable, a really fun twist is added, combining the polar bear ride with Crash 1's Indiana Jones style boulder chase, but with a giant polar bear. I felt that the 3 islands in Crash Bandicoot 1 were really interesting, featuring a wild jungle, rivers, old temples, castles, and more. Crash 2 is set in these same islands. We lose some types of levels, like this toxic waste dump, and gain others, like these snowy glaciers. Overall, I think there's a good balance in Crash 2 of old and new level types, but I think there could have been a little more variety overall. Perhaps some levels in unexplored parts of Cortex's castle, caves in the first island, or high up in the giant tree in the second island. The slight lack of variety isn't a huge problem, since the levels are so well designed and full of great platforming fun, but a few more level types would have been perfect. Like in Crash 1, the scenery in every level is visually pleasing and full of detail, from the jungles to the neon-lit catwalks of Cortex's spaceship. And there's Crash Bandicoot's trademark vistas of well-known landmarks, like Cortex's castle. And then high up in the castle there's stunning views over the other islands at night. All these details make the levels feel as if they expand far beyond the parts of the level you actually play, and this makes the world of Crash Bandicoot 2 feel fleshed out and surprisingly believable. There are plenty of new boss fights too. Cortex is a mad scientist, and it's interesting to see more of his enhanced animal creations, and these fights are very fun to play to boot. The music in these fights is pretty spectacular. In fact, Crash Bandicoot 2 is one of my favourite video game soundtracks. The music in the jungle is ambient and complements the action, and the futuristic score in the jetpack levels has to be one of the finest pieces of music ever composed for a video game. Crash Bandicoot 1 was a great game, but it did have its flaws, and I think it's important that a sequel doesn't repeat the problems of the previous game. It's good to see that Crash Bandicoot 2 addresses the issues with the save system in Crash 1. Crash 1's system of collecting tokens and completing a bonus stage without dying in order to save game was all too complex and frustrating. In Crash 2, the player can save by simply walking to a save screen after completing a level. In Crash 2, some levels contain a skull and crossbones platform, usually about halfway through the level. If you reach this without losing any lives, you're transported to a secret part of the level. If you complete this, you'll be rewarded with a gem, and to complete Crash Bandicoot 2 100%, you'll need every gem and crystal in the game. But as well as this, these Skull and Crossbones stages add a little more challenge for experienced gamers, and it's new ideas like this that make sequels special. Another improvement in Crash 2 comes from the level select. Instead of only being allowed to play one level at a time, Crash 2 has warp rooms with a choice of levels. This allows the player to choose their own difficulty curve and what type of level they feel like playing next. In conclusion, I think Crash Bandicoot 2 is an excellent example of a sequel. It takes everything that was great about Crash Bandicoot 1, the gameplay, the soundtrack, the level design, and the atmosphere, and it adds something new to it. The result is this fantastic game that I'd recommend playing if you haven't already. So do I prefer Crash Bandicoot 1 or 2? To be honest with you, it's probably nostalgia, but after all my praise of Crash 2, Crash Bandicoot 1 will probably always be my favourite. However, both games are absolutely excellent, and although Crash 1 is my favourite of the two, whether it's actually a better game or not is up for debate. If I were to rate Crash 2, I'd give it 9.9 out of 10. There's a couple of tiny flaws, but it's pretty much perfect. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Stay tuned for more scrutinies. This is Johnny Powell, signing out.